Is Kamala Harris's VP guilty of stolen valor? This new Megyn Kelly segment revealed shocking details about Tim Walz's supposed military record that you need to hear. I'm Vince with Resist the Mainstream. If you enjoy our content, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe so we can keep bringing you videos like this. And without further ado, you need to take a listen to this.
I do want to point out, just yesterday, the Harris campaign tweeted out a soundbite from him from 2018 where he seems to be suggesting he was, quote, in war. Take a listen to this.
Hope woke up like many of you did 5 weeks ago and Dad said, Dad, you're the only person I know who's in elected office. You need to stop what's happening with this. I'll take my kick in the butt for the NRA. I spent 25 years in the Army and I hunt. And I gave the money back, and I'll tell you what I have been doing. I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
Now, Tom, he did go to Italy in 2003. Afghanistan was underway at that time, not yet Iraq. Memory serves. I'm trying to remember the exact date, but he was in Italy. So could that arguably be, quote, in war?
Well, maybe it felt like war to him. I guess it's not technically war. That's not a combat zone. You're not getting combat pay in there, and you are not in war. That is just absolutely just another Tim Walz lie out there. And the people listening to it probably believe it because they don't know any better. I mean, he had it out there that he was in Italy and supporting troops that went to Afghanistan or some BS story. And yeah, I think, I guess I'm pretty sure Iraq was, starting and going on at that time to a certain point.
It started in 2003. I just don't know when, in 2003.
We were there. Cause I'm pretty sure when we were there, we got the notification that Saddam had been captured, cause he was on, they were hunting him basically from, whatever time. And I'm pretty confident it was like December of 2003 when they caught him. And I know everybody was elated, that we finally caught that dirty dictator that had done horrible things to his people and his country for years and years.
But of course, where was Tim Walz? Allegedly, he was in Italy, which would not be an issue. I'm not trying to just attack people who serve in the military. Obviously, on any level, it's honorable, but you are lying about it. Much like everything about Kamala Harris's campaign, his supposed record in war or service in war is completely fake, and that tells you a lot that you need to know.
And maybe things will finally change. That was that is just amazing. I can't believe you'd think a lightning bolt would have struck him right there.
Well, can you help us understand why that's such a big deal, right? Because I think there might be some people at home saying like, in war, he was kind of war adjacent. He was in Italy helping support the guys who were, quote, in war. Is it a big deal to say you were in war when you weren't actually in combat?
Yes.
It's a huge deal for veterans, and it should be a huge deal for the general public out there because basically it's proof that you're a liar. And if you're just lying for political gain or you're lying just because you think that's what the people you're talking to want to hear, that's not good as a leader of a country. I mean, to me, that's just it's undescribable how somebody can do that. As far as the soldiers out there's an awful lot of them that, before 2000, I had never been to war. I've been overseas training here and there. We were in the Cold War, which technically was a war. We didn't fire a shot, but we built things up to the point where we broke the Soviet Union without having to be in a hot war with them, which was good. But, for somebody to say they've been in war and they're not, that is, like the saying has been, stolen valor. You're basically out there acting like you're something that you're not. And that's not a good thing. That's bold-faced lying.
And that's exactly our point. I'm sure some Kamala supporters will say, you're attacking veterans. Why are you shaming him for military service? That's not what we're doing, right? Nobody would go to Tim Walz and say, haha, you only served in Italy. You didn't actually fight in the war. Yeah, you still served in the military. The point is, you are lying about it, right? It is stolen valor. Don't say you did things that you didn't. And yes, it is actually insulting to veterans, not what we are saying about Tim Walz, but what he is doing by claiming the valor of the people who actually fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, when the history here seems very clear. That's not what he did, right? He was in Iraq for like 2 seconds and left before anything, started, and he was in Italy during the actual war, right?
I think every soldier knows that. I mean, I just think every soldier knows there's a distinction between being in war and being in a position to support the guys who are actually in the war. And most soldiers would never dream of saying they'd fought in it when they hadn't, though Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut certainly did and was nonetheless elected to senator as a Democrat, notwithstanding.
Seems like a pattern here, right?
There's another question of stolen valor, which I teased before the break, and that is this position of command sergeant major, which he held for a short time conditionally, as you outlined before. He needed to complete some other things in order to actually have the title, which he didn't. But now, repeatedly since he left, he's referred to himself as a retired command sergeant major, and he's allowed others to introduce him and call him that. Here's just an example.
I'm a retired command sergeant major. I spent 24 years in the Army National Guard.
So when you first came to Washington, you were a retired command sergeant major in the Army National Guard. So you were drawn immediately to...
As a 24-year veteran of the National Guard and the Red Bull Division and a retired command sergeant major.
So why do you think that's not true? Why do you have an issue with him doing that?
Because it is not true. He is not a retired command sergeant major. He's a retired master sergeant. When he failed, when he dropped out of the sergeant major's academy and when he quit, the obligations were not fulfilled for his conditional promotion. So he ended up being reduced to master sergeant. So his retirement, which he's 60 now, which he is probably drawing, is E8 master sergeant. He is not a retired command sergeant major. The state of Minnesota even brought it out there. Well, he can't call himself a retired command sergeant major, but he can say he served as, which, technically he was an acting command sergeant major for a few months, and then he didn't fulfill responsibilities and the conditions, and he was reduced. So they kind of came around and hee-hawed that, well, yeah, he can say he served as one, but he's right there on video and audio that he says he is a retired command sergeant major, and he's not. That's part of the reason that I brought this whole thing out in 2016, I believe, was when he came down to a memorial here and in Heron Lake, Minnesota, and he spoke, and he did the same thing to them. The public, he was in the 1st District of Congress, the United House of Representatives, and he basically said that he was a retired command sergeant major. There was a write-up in the paper, and it was in there 6-7 times. And he tooted his horn, how he was the highest ranking, whatever. And one of my neighbors said, well, he knew I had went to Iraq, and he was like, I got to meet a fellow command sergeant major of yours. And I said, he is not one. I said, he didn't fulfill the obligations. And his son-in-law is in the military in South Dakota. And he was like, we don't know that. You need to get this out there. And I'm like, why do I got to do this? I just want to be back here in Southwest Minnesota and live my life. And he's like, well, somebody's got to bring it out there. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm the one chosen then. So I wrote a letter to Mr. Walz, and I basically said, this is a lie. Can you just please correct the record? If somebody calls you a retired command sergeant major, can you please just tell them that is not true and just come clean? I gave him the opportunity. He didn't say a damn word to me. And so I sent it to the other departments in Washington that he was on the committees with. And I told them all, I said, he's not a retired command sergeant major. I'd appreciate it. And everybody else out there that is a actual command sergeant major would appreciate it if he would cease and desist lying to everybody. And, then he started losing in the 1st District, and he ran for governor. And then, our state they had the Great Minnesota cover up with him, basically, where they didn't want this to get out too much, so they kind of hid it. But now that he's on the national stage, I think people they absolutely need to know the truth before he gets in any more powerful position.
How about all?
It just baffles me too how he would think he could lie about that and get away with it, because it's like, again, let me reiterate this. You already served in the military. Okay, that's all you got to say. I'm a veteran. But the guy is so obsessed with lying and trying to build up a fake record here that he's willing to fake his position, lie about the title he had in the military. And for what exactly? Like, do normal people know the difference between regular sergeant, command sergeant, major? No, but he's just doing it because it shows what his character is, right? He's just that much of a lying bag. He's willing to use stolen valor for political gain, and again, just says everything you need to know about his character. Truly.
Well, those actual command sergeant majors who went through the 2-year training, did their duty, served the country for that additional time, earned the title. Why should he be running around saying he's retired with that rank when he didn't actually earn it? It was a conditional title that he didn't actually earn it out. And now it is stolen valor. I agree with you. You've convinced me. I didn't totally understand it, I confess, before we chatted, Tom, but that's just wrong. I mean, the titles in military service matter. They show that you've been elevated for a reason. You've done some extra work. You've done some extra, things of honor in some cases, but the medals, the titles, they're there for a reason.
They are, and that's part of the reason the stolen valor stuff came out when it did, because you had people out there that were wearing a combat infantry badge or a silver star or a bronze star or a combat action badge, or they had service stripes that showed they were overseas for 2 years, and and they came out with it. And I think they actually said that, well, yeah, that's kind of a weird way to have a freedom of speech thing. But, this whole command sergeant major thing is, there's thousands of people that have went through the academy and have served honorably all the way up to the United States Army command sergeant major, the top dog of all of them. And, everybody put in their time and their devotion to duty and their loyalty and their integrity and respect for others and their selfless service. And you got this guy out. I mean, I met, a couple E9s and a couple colonels, air base one time when we were just waiting for a flight. And then I found out later that their helicopter got shot down, and there were 7 of them on there. And there was a female CSM from Iowa, and they all got killed, and they're buried in Arlington. And it's like, somebody needs to speak for them to keep somebody like this from being able to hang on their coattails and say, yeah, I was a CSM. I was a command sergeant major. We got to stop these weapons of war. I was in war. I mean, what is going on with this guy? I mean, I think he's lived the lie so long he believes it himself.
Exactly.
Tom, we reached out to him to get a reaction to what we anticipated you would be saying. No response. He did give a response back in October 2022 to the Star Tribune, and said, quote, "I don't know if Tom just disagrees with my politics or whatever, but my record speaks for itself and my accomplishments in uniform speak for itself."
Oh, the record that you completely made up? Yeah, that surely does speak for itself. Here's the reality. Everything about the Kamala Harris campaign is fake, and it's just so telling, even down to the supposed military valor of the VP. Again, and who actually cares when you break it down? Is anyone thinking of voting for the Tim Walz ticket, but they're like, okay, but he was a veteran, but did he do this in war or that in war? No, nobody really is making important voting decisions based on that. And the fact that you're a veteran alone should be enough. But again, the guy is so obsessed with lying, with doing whatever he needs to cheat and mislead his way to the top, that he's willing to do stuff like that. That's totally baffling. That's totally mind-boggling to me. Why would you claim fake titles? Why would you claim that you served in war when you didn't? You could have just said you're a veteran, but it tells you just how power-hungry and insane these people are, and exactly why they need to be kept out of the White House. Because if they're willing to lie about that just for the sake of it, just because they can, then what are they willing to lie about or cheat about when it comes to things that actually matter? And that is, of course, a strong case among amongst the many other things, amongst the Tim Walz progressive record and, you know, Kamala Harris and all that, just another reason why this ticket is dangerous for America. And that said, if you know any veterans, be sure to share this video around so that everyone knows this guy is a fraud. This guy's a total liar. That said, I've been Vince for Resist the Mainstream. Hope you enjoyed our video, and peace.